I'll be taking a look at the Nikon Coolpix SO1 Point and Shoot camera. This is Nikon's smallest camera for 2012. It came out September 14th, 2012. And anyway, this is the Nikon Coolpix SO1 Point and Shoot camera. And anyway, I'm going to be doing a full review on this camera. And anyway, this is the chrome version. I did get this in chrome. They do make this in 4 different colors: chrome, pink, white, and red. I do have chrome. Chrome is the most common color you will find at the store. I did want the white color, but however they were out of white, so I just took the chrome one. It does look silver, but it's actually called chrome. But anyway, the chrome color does get a lot of fingerprints. I don't know if it gets a lot of scratches. I will make another video after a couple of months and tell you if this camera contracts a lot of scratches. I just got this camera, so I really don't know if it gets a lot of scratches, but maybe over wear and tear it will get a lot of scratches. But for now, it's doing pretty good. It just gets a lot of fingerprints. So if you're paranoid or if you have OCD, then I recommend getting a different color. But this is the chrome color, but it does get a lot of fingerprints. So anyway, let's continue on with this review. It does say Nikon on the front, and it does say Coolpix on the front. Of course, there's your lens right there. It is 4.1 to 123 millimeter, if anybody was wondering. And it also got a lens cap on the front, so it keeps your camera from getting a lot of dust and fingerprints on it, or yeah, just fingerprints mostly. And then you do got your microphone right there for when you're taking video. The microphone is only mono. It only got one microphone on the front, so it is mono microphone, but it's still got a microphone for taking that video. And the lens cap on the front of it is automatic, so you don't have to worry about popping off a lens cap or losing a lens cap. It is automatic. And then on top, above the lens, it does got a light sensor. So if you're in low light situations and you keep it in automatic mode, it will sensor it's low and turn on the flash. Right next to the light sensor, it does got a flash right there. And moving to the top of the camera, you got a couple of different buttons right here. It does say Coolpix SO1. You do got an on-off button. You do have that shutter button right there to use the zoom. It does have a zoom on it. I'll get to that later in the specs part. Then you also got a shutter button to take the pictures. If you hold it down halfway before you click it, it will autofocus. It does have autofocus on here. It doesn't have any terms of manual focus, but it does have autofocus on here. And then you do have a playback button right there, so if you don't want to go into the menu and fool around with the menu, you can just press that button and it takes you right to your movies and pictures you've taken. And you got a little picture of a camera right there. Unfortunately, even though this camera takes a video, it doesn't got a dedicated video button like a red big button and stuff. So if you're a person like an old person or a person that doesn't know about technology, it'll be kind of hard for you to get into the menus and actually find video mode. But it does have no video button on it, a dedicated video button on it anyway. Moving to the back of the camera, it does say Nikon, and it does have a touchscreen on it. The touchscreen on here is 2.5 inches. It is a TFT display, but it is a touchscreen. Since this camera is so small, they really had to put a touchscreen on it. I wish they really put a D-pad on it right there, but it is a touchscreen. I'll get to that stuff later. And then also it has a home button right there. There is the home button right there. You press that to get to the menus. The only way you can get to the menus in this camera is not by the touchscreen, by pressing the home button. It's really like a touch button or touch sensitive button right there. Moving to the side of the camera, it does have a support for a strap. I suggest you do put on the strap on this camera, just because this camera is so thin. When you're holding it like this, it is a one-handed camera device, but when you're holding it with one hand, you are likely to drop this camera. So I do suggest using the strap. The strap does come in the box, which is very handy. And on camera, it does look like the hole for the strap is a little bit off-centered. It's not really centered, but that may just be me or something. I'm not really sure. And then on the other side, it just got a screw, so it's just flesh on this side. Moving to the bottom of the camera, it does have an AV out. The AV out's where you charge it and sync it to the computer. You can buy another cable if you want to hook it up to the TV through red, white, and yellow. You can't get any HDMI on here when you're plugging into a TV, but you can get standard red, white, and yellow cables. So when I'm going to open this up, you just take your fingernail and stick it in that hole, and then it opens up. I'll demonstrate that. And the cable that you use to sync it and charge it is not proprietary, so you don't have to worry about finding a certain cable for it or buying one. You can buy a standard one. It's not really standard. It's like micro or mini, but it is still not proprietary from Nikon, which is pretty cool. There is a certain way you actually open this up. If you hold it to one side, there is one way you can open it. It is kind of tricky to open just because it is really small. Oh shit, I can't open it. It's getting kind of hard. I can open it right here. without busting it. I do apologize for this part, it is kind of tricky. I'll be back when I can open this. So there we go, the hole is open for the USB cable. There's where the USB cable goes to sync it and charge it. And like I said, you can't buy another cable to plug it into a TV, but there it is. It isn't proprietary from Nikon, so you can buy just a regular USB cable, a mini USB cable, or micro. I'm gonna go ahead and close that up. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk about specs on this camera. This is a very small camera. I'm going to compare it to my hand. Your hands may be bigger or smaller than mine, but there's how it compares to my hand. It is a very tiny camera. It will fit in most purses and most pockets of jeans, and it will fit in shirt pockets. It is a very thin camera. I haven't really seen a camera this small before. Of course, comparing it to a spy cameras are smaller, but for a point and shoot camera, this is about the smallest on the market right now as of 2012. You people on YouTube, or people in general, may know other cameras that are smaller than this, but for right now, this is the smallest camera I know of. This is pretty amazing. It isn't really too thin. It is pretty thick in terms of thickness, but in terms of overall size, it is pretty small. And I do have to say, this camera is pretty lightweight for a camera this size. It is pretty lightweight. So now I'm going to run down the specs. It just got a 10 megapixel sensor inside, so you can take 10 megapixel pictures. It does shoot video at 720p. It can't shoot 1080p videos. It only shoots 720p. 720p videos with a mono microphone, so you can't shoot stereo. You can't shoot stereo sound when you're shooting video, but it does shoot 720p videos, high definition videos. It also has a 2.5-inch LCD on the back, like I already showed you before. It is TFT display. And it also has a 3x optical zoom on the front. It is pretty spectacular that this camera does support a 3x optical zoom. You would think the lens would be digital or have no zoom at all, but it does have a zoom. The zoom is 3x, which is pretty cool, because most smartphones only have a digital zoom, and since this camera is so thin, it does have a 3x optical zoom. I mean, 3x isn't really too big, but it's still pretty cool. They're able to manage an optical zoom in this camera, because as you know, optical zoom does not get blurry when you zoom in compared to digital zoom. Like if you use digital zoom, it does get blurry when you zoom in. But anyway, that's still pretty cool for a camera this size. So anyway, I'm gonna wrap this whole video up, and I'm gonna talk about the review and my final thoughts on this camera. This camera is $178 brand new. For the holidays, you can find this camera all the way from $99 brand new, all the way up to $178 brand new. And this may not be $99 by the time you're watching this video, because the holidays may be over. But right now, you can buy this camera from $99 all the way up to $178, which is pretty cool. I say if you're buying this camera for retail price at $178, I say do not buy this camera, because this camera is very expensive at $178, and you can find better cameras from $100 all the way up to $200 with better specs and better pictures. The pictures that come out of this camera are pretty mediocre, medium to mediocre, because these are equivalent to a smartphone camera. I suggest if you have a smartphone, just use your smartphone camera. Don't try getting this camera. I mean, if you have $99 laying around the house, or just $99 extra dollars, I say go ahead. What the heck? Go ahead and get this camera for $99. You can play around with it and use it for a really small camera. But for that $178 price, I say hold off on this camera. This camera is not any better than your smartphone camera. It may be a little bit better than your smartphone camera, but not by much, just because the pictures are pretty mediocre, are medium to mediocre. They are a little bit washed out, and the colors really don't pop out at you. They're nothing really spectacular. And one thing to mention about this camera is when you're zooming in with the zoom, it is a little bit choppy. Even if you hold it down all the way, when you're going to zoom in, the zoom is a little bit choppy. I mean, it still works pretty well, but it is a little bit choppy when you're zooming. But when you get it there, it's pretty good. Just when you're zooming in, it like jerks a little bit when you're using the zoom. I don't know why. I guess the zoom isn't that good on this camera, but it does jerk when you're using the zoom. Also, the touchscreen on the back is very clunky. It is not a good touchscreen on the back. It takes a lot of presses to actually press the touchscreen. Touchscreen controls are really bad, so when you're going through the menus are horrible on this camera. Just because the touchscreen is horrible, I mean, the menus are really simplified, but I mean, using the touchscreen is pretty unbearable. You won't really want to use a touchscreen on this camera. It is unbearable. Like I said, it takes five or six presses before you can actually get the menus to start working. I mean, sometimes if you're lucky, you can get them in 1 or 2 hits of a press, but for the most part, the touchscreen on the back is very, very clunky. I do not recommend actually going into the menus as much as possible because it is very clunky. There is some stuff in the menu, but you won't really need to go into the menu much unless you're going to video mode and picture mode and stuff. Now I'm going to talk about what I like about this camera. What I like about the camera is, of course, the size of this camera. That's one reason you would buy this camera, for the small size of the camera. It is so small you can take it anywhere. The video on this camera is pretty good. They're almost better than the pictures. I say if you need a camera, a really small camera for taking video, I suggest go ahead and get this for still $99. Do not pay $178 because you're still pretty much not getting ripped off for $178. I mean, not really ripped off. You're just not really getting a good camera. But anyway, if you're going to use this for taking videos, it will produce pretty good videos at 720p, but remember, you're only going to get mono sound. But the videos on here are pretty good. I do like the video capability on this camera better than the picture taking capability on this camera. So if you're going to use this for video, I do recommend it. It is very good for taking video for YouTube or some stuff. But even if you have this camera, I wouldn't really recommend going out and taking your baby's birth or a wedding or anything pretty much important, because this camera won't really get the job done. The pictures are pretty much washed out. They're not really colorless. They're just not a lot of color, and they don't really pop out at you like really good pictures. But if you're just gonna buy this for $99 and play around with this camera, just go ahead and get it for $99. But other than that, don't really buy this camera. It has internal memory and internal battery, which is really bad. If you're going to be out for long periods of time, you'll be without a camera, because once the battery dies, once you charge it on the computer or charge it with a supplied AC wall outlet adapter, you can't really use the camera while it's charging, so that's pretty much bad too. While it's charging, if you have a backup battery or any such thing, you can't really use this camera while it's charging. It's only used for playback while it's charging, which kind of sucks. So I suggest to skip on this camera for that $178 price point. Once again, this is a Nikon Coolpix SO1 Point and 2 camera, and I will be doing a demo of the touchscreen on the back and the main